Hi. Over the period of last month, I've read some Japanese literature books, and I phrased my phrase in that phrasing because it wasn't over a month, nor this month. It was a mixture between the two, but I know it took me a month. Hi, how are you? I'm going to be sharing with you 11 books that I've read across the period of 11 months, across the period of a month, and we're going to discuss them. They turned out to be some of the best work of literature that I've ever read. I started this with a short story thinking it won't lead me into a rabbit hole, and it did, and it was Sleep by Haruki Murakami. Like we're familiar with Murakami's work, this was a magical realism short story. We're familiar with short stories, but we are familiar with the magical realism aspect. And honestly, no one does it better than his books. The more I read, and the more I explore in the genre, the more I discover that no one does it best. No one does it better than Murakami. He has just this way of compiling magical realism with contemporary, with just making you straight up feel fucking uncomfortable. That is pure ingenious. Following a woman who can't sleep, or the rest of us need it to survive, well, some of us, she just can't. She doesn't need it. She doesn't able to do it, she just doesn't do it. And instead using the time she should have been asleep to read, and later faking a stable sleep schedule and a stable life and a mental health. Right out of the bat, you see where this has me by the balls, where this is relatable, where this is familiar to me, and is gonna be familiar to a lot of us. We follow her faking a stable daily routine for the sake of her family, her husband, and her kid. It gave sort of a calm essence while still being extremely chaotic and unstable, and I don't know how that was accomplished the way it was. I went through the motions, sleeping, cooking, playing with my son, sleeping with my husband. It was easy once I got the hang of it. You can sort of see from that one tiny teeny quote how it sort of talks about mental health without actually talking about mental health. It's so unfortunately familiar to me and to a lot of us, the act of faking something, of faking a daily routine, a daily life for the sake of other people, while we are extremely unfamiliar with it, while we get imposter syndrome every time we do something normal. That captivated that in such a weird essence to it that it just felt so natural to read. Later goes on using the time to read instead of sleeping by saying, I was escaping my life and it was wonderful. My hands weren't empty anymore. Here I was, alive, and could feel it. It was real, and I wasn't being consumed any longer. Not surprisingly, was brilliant and personally gave me a feeling of familiarity and a feeling of belonging. I have to say though, if you can get your hands on the illustrated version, get that, because the illustrations were absolutely beautiful and added so much to the beauty of the story. As a whole, it was a decent short story, not the best I've read, but still held its own, like the least you could say. Definitely not the best from Murakami, but worth it still, especially if you're familiar with this sort of thing. Although reading it or Murakami's work in general, you will not get a closure, so keep that in mind. Next up we have With the Beatles, also by Murakami. Following the main theme of memories, nostalgia, and getting older, I honestly believe this one would be relatable to everyone. It's not that I've gotten older, aged, that catches me off guard. Rather how people from the same generation have gotten older. It sort of captures the moment we all experience repeatedly throughout our lives of meeting people from like our generation, people the same age as us, and seeing that they've gotten older, and then seeing that they've moved on and now they have kids and married and doing this and that, and you're still stuck in a certain age, in a certain place in your life. Familiarizes that feeling so much, and I don't know how I feel about that. Like classic Murakami, it's filled with girls, music, and life. It wasn't the best I've read from Murakami, but I know if I were to crack that spine back again, would still feel a sense of familiarity, which is what drew me so much to this story. Next up, I've read a book that is so freaking hyped, and I'm excited to talk about it, and that is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This freaking book had so many readers award that it needs a read more tab in the Goodreads thingy to see all the awards that it's gotten, because it's so much. I can both see why it's gotten them and also not understand why it's gotten them. Because after reading all of that, I was expecting a bit more. So I would 100% recommend not to see any of that, and not to go through summaries, not to go through reviews, not to go through the awards it won, and any interviews leading to the release of the book, anything like that. Just read it and build your own opinion before watching or seeing any of that, because it will ruin stuff for you. It did for me personally. All that being said, I still was not disappointed. Definitely a study of literature and a book that is... You can see why it has a place in the echelon of books. Following Clara, it's from the point of view of Clara, that is an AI that is made to befriend kids. In a world that it's normal and people like this post-apocalyptic world where people buy these AIs for their kids' company. Honestly, it was believable and familiar in a freaking scary way. A bit boring, but like I said, it was a study of literature to where after the first boring layer, now I get it if you're not the type of person that wants or likes to give books a chance and like read a little bit, if you like it, you like it, if you don't, DNF, that's completely fine. But if you aren't that type of person, then if you think it's a little bit boring at the start, then hold on to it, because it does get better and so much deeper. This was an onion. It had so many freaking layers. There was a lot of complexity and an eerie, scary familiarity. And I feel like this is a book you'll either absolutely love or hate. Like, I feel like there is no space between them. I feel like there are like 3 spaces with this book. After you read this book, either you are in love and you think this is a masterpiece, you absolutely hate it, you don't understand the hype, or you're in the middle where you're just like, I don't what is happening? But for me personally, there were so many layers that it ended up leaning towards the masterpiece side. Clara gets her human after a long time of the boring part, and things happen in the household that perplexed me, if you will. And I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but after what happened in the household when Clara gets her human, it made me make a choice of, I'm either going to take a long time reading this and analyze it line by line and point by point, or just read and enjoy and form an opinion at the end. And I chose the latter. Because after what happens in the household, I knew that this shit is deep. This is going to be a lot of layers, and I need to make a choice. Because this is the type of book that you can take weeks, if not months, dissecting. As a whole, I personally don't think this is a must-read, but I still enjoyed it. Going back to Murakami, next up is Cream. This is technically not even a short story, an article published in the New Yorker in 2019 issue, with the main theme of the cream of life, or la crème de la crème. So what is known as the essence of life. Holding on until you find it and let it go after it's done its job, and then holding on until you find another essence. And oh my god, how can I not love it? Pushing the message of living, simply living for the hope, holding on to the hope of finding your essence or your cream, that it's okay. And it was so heartwarming to read those books. It's okay. Life is a game that we're all winging, which gave me this comforting feeling that I ended up like, it ended up filling my heart. Alright, I'm gonna get a little bit mad now because this book irks me, it rubs me the wrong way, and that is South of the Border, West of the Sun, also by Haruki Murakami. Following the most annoying, pretentious sod you'll ever fucking meet. Bro is literally hot human garbage. Hot, swampy, grummy human garbage. Person who thinks he's better than everyone else while being a piece of shit. Starving rabbit raccoon wouldn't touch. Bro is literally cheating on his loving, gorgeous wife, then has the audacity, the nerve to say, I couldn't care less about the subject they brought up. They keep talking as if I cared. I was like, I know, right? I know, as if we care. I know exactly how you feel, my friend. Not gonna lie, this wasn't the best. I kept reading and then I hit a point where I was like, wait, what is this about again? Like, it lost me. At one point, he literally said that he was hurt because he thinks his wife doesn't love him anymore. Nani? What? When he got hurt, I literally did not give a fuck. I was like, yay, do it again. Do a backflip this time. Following a man who travels every week to cheat on his wife, following a POV of a narcissistic, boring, pretentious asshole. And with all of that, Murakami found a way to not make this a cringe fest, to actually have incredible writing that it's making me feel this anger, and it's been a month since I've read this fucking book. I've read a review that said I can't imagine being his wife, like Murakami's wife, and then read this book. Imagine, he would sleep on the couch. Except we have a disturbing one. It was Edition by Rui Murakami. Boy, where do I start with this one, my man? Okay, so it's following a dude, a filmmaker. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still in a bit of a shock with this book, and it's been a month since I've read it. I'm in a weird place with this book. Following a filmmaker named Aoyama who hasn't been himself since his wife passed away and hasn't been with anyone or dated anyone, met anyone for, 7 years? To the point where even his son notices and begs him to go and get some pussy. And then taking the advice of his friend, since he's a filmmaker, he has the brilliant idea, his friend, to have an audition and basically for a wife. Such as though that the contenders do not know what's happening and they think they're going to audition for this role. He is still a credible filmmaker, but he is taking this as an opportunity to sort through them and see which one fits, because he was scared of moving forward and taking the time to see if someone fits or not and blah, blah, blah. So he does this instead. It's like, yeah, incredible genius. I know, right? You could have just dated someone for a month. And that is where we meet the girl he ends up being enamored and completely enchanted with, ensorcelled with even, in a way that was weird from the beginning. I did not rate this, and I'm not going to, because it was like outside the boundaries of 5 stars rating. Neither in a good or a weird way or a bad way, it was just outside it. This one bewildered me. Diving into childhood trauma, PTSD, and how horribly it can affect a person. This book starts okay, and then you have this eerie, weird feeling, and then it takes a turn so quick and so aggressively and so differently, since with the beginning of the book, that it just catches you off guard, and then in a way where we don't know who the victim is in this story. I'm not going to discuss the details of it as to not spoil, but please be warned, and for the love of God and anything holy, do check the trigger warnings, because yeah. This was a psychological thriller that took the genre literally and did it perfectly. I Am a Cat by Natsume Sasuke. Like every person that comes across this book, the title intrigued me. I am a cat. I have no name. When I was born is unknown to me. How can you start a book with that opening line and not continue and not be intrigued immediately? Written from 1904 through 1906, it details the absolute entertaining and satire lives of the upper middle class of Japanese society. It was smart, witty, and absolutely brilliant, and funny and sardonic in a way that I didn't expect, and I can definitely see why it ended up being a staple in Japanese literature. Following the life of a nameless stray cat, telling us his POV of humans. Reading a human described as the most deformed cat I've ever seen is something that I did not think ever would be top tier literature, but it was, and it was glorious. As you progress reading, you learn how deeper this simple idea of a cat POV goes. Learning about people, seeing people when they don't hide behind the personality we create for others, for the public eye, thinking we are safe because our only companion is a cat. So being seen by a creature who we think is nonsensical leads us to be ourselves, which leads to a very interesting story. It managed not only to be a highlight of the month, but to place itself into a very, very special place. Keep in mind though that there isn't much happening plot-wise, but it was still extremely compelling. It won't be a read enjoyed for everyone, and I can definitely see why and understand why, but for me personally it was genius because of how simple it was. Next up, I read The Setting Sun by Osama Desai, from the same author that gave us the masterpiece that was No Longer Human. The Setting Sun follows life set in the early post-war years, how war leaves destructive effects on not only country alone, a society alone, but everything as a whole. It was painful and tragic and heartbreakingly realistic. Study of life in a world filled with tragedy. Any man who criticizes my suicide and passes judgment on me with an expression of superiority, declaring that I should have gone on living my full complement of days, is assuredly a prodigy amongst men, quite capable of tranquilly urging the emperor to open a fruit shop. Knowing the author's life and how it went and how it ended, it gives you not only the sense of familiarity, sadly, the sense of familiarity, but you can definitely feel the author's melancholy, feel the author's mental pain, really, in his words. It doesn't leave an impact like the one left after I read No Longer Human, but just the sense of familiarity almost makes up for it. Wait. In our lives, we know joy, anger, sorrow, and 100 other emotions. But these emotions altogether occupy a brief 1% of our time. The remaining 99% is just living in waiting. I cannot put in words how hard that hit me. Next up, we have The Temple of the Gold Pavilion, and yes, I am gonna get mad again. It was by Yukio Mishima, and I was excited about this. It was the first book that I've read by the author, and I don't know how I feel about it. Following a boy that lived through the childhood trauma of seeing his mother get dicked down by someone she shouldn't be being dicked down by, which resulted in him developing a stutter, which resulted in him being nicknamed the stutterer and bullied a lot in school. As much as he fucking tried, he just cannot escape either his past trauma or his present one of being bullied. And his absolute obsession with this temple and his obsession and fixation of becoming a priest somehow free himself, I guess. The main character is one of the most pretentious sods ever. Point where reading his POV became mentally draining. All of that, his obsession, him being bullied, his obsession with becoming a priest resulted in him like developing this higher sense of self that doesn't really exist. It's not there. I'm not seeing it. We're not seeing it. He's the only one that's seeing it, and he's just like he's being bullied, torn to shreds. And then he's just like I don't need to deal with them. I'm gonna be in this place, in this better place. And it's kind of sad, honestly, but just the way it was written, it was just fucking annoying. They also have this sense of not being like others, which is tiring, draining to read. Throughout the book, it was kind of sad how desperately he wanted to believe that he was special, not like the other people, and there's something special destined for him. I liked the writing style. I could not with this character. I think there was a lot to it, especially by the end and what happened. I'm not gonna spoil anything. But I couldn't see the bigger picture of the story, even though I know for a fact it's there staring me right in the fucking eye, but I could not see it because how fucking pretentious he was. It sadly ended up taking a lot from the story. Next up, probably like the highlight of the month was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I didn't expect that much. I was a little disappointed by Clara and the Sun, like I said, but this, I can see what the Nobel Prize was meant, where it was meant to be given to, like, why? I kept waiting while leading Clara and the Sun for the Nobel Prize worthy author, but this is where I found him. Following Kathy, a schoolgirl in a boarding school named Helsham. Only after she leaves, she discovers, and we with her discover the truth about the school and about her time spent there with her friends. Right off the bat, you sense that there's something off just by the way these kids are being described and treated, and nicknamed. The level of depth that was in this made me want to reopen it and reread it the moment I finished. It left me hopeless, but in a good way. It's subversive and it makes you uncomfortable, and oh my god, was that good. It was pretentious at times, but the writing makes it digestible still. Learning to let go is important to progress in life, and the way that theme was wrapped around this story, it just was done in a genius way. It was done in a genius way. Look at me reviewing a Nobel Prize winning book. Like it matters. That was going to be the end of this, but I read another one because I am growing slightly obsessed with Osamu Dazai. Yes, I am mentally unstable. Yes, I'm obsessed with the man. Nobody in the world understands our suffering. In time, when we become adults, we may look back at the time of pain and loneliness as a funny thing, perfectly ordinary even and normal. How are we expected to go by? To get through this interminable period of time? Until that point, there was no one to teach us how. This was Schoolgirl, following the daily life of a schoolgirl in her daily life, from dusk till dawn and dawn till dusk, till when she wakes up until she falls asleep, and with a premise that simple and a plot where not a plot really that simple. You need a lot of substance, a lot of heftiness in the writing to make this good. And boy, did it have that and so much more. I cannot explain how heavily relatable this was. I can feel Dazai's hurt and struggles and melancholy and depression and loneliness and sadness in this 130 pages from the POV of a fucking girl. It had this sense of hollowness to it that is so relatable and will remain relatable. And it made this story a book and a story that you can pick up 100 years from now and read, and a lot of people will still find it relatable and still be familiar with it. It was a vast landscape of the struggles of depression in 130 pages. And how the person that is suffering from it wants nothing but to be normal. Tomorrow will probably be another day, like today. Happiness will never come my way. I know that. But it's probably best to go to sleep, believing that it will surely come. Tomorrow, it will come. The way his voice and mental health, his situation at the time comes through the writing is incredible. This clearly is a story that will haunt you and personally I think leaves a mark on you well after you finish it. Certainly left its mark on me. These are the 11 Japanese literature books that I've been reading recently. This wasn't so entertaining or whatever. I just wanted to sit down and share the books that I've read with you because, I don't know, maybe you're gonna find one that you will like. This is such a long video and I'm sorry. I hope you grabbed a snack. I should have said this in the beginning, but yeah, just grab a snack and sit with me, please. I love you. I'm gonna see you next video. Bye.